In the last lesson, we discussed the difference between helpful and unhelpful thoughts and how they can impact our decisions. Today, we'll learn how to interrupt and reframe unhelpful thoughts. But first, let's think of some examples of helpful and unhelpful thoughts. Imagine this is happening to you. You just got settled in class when you realize the pencil you put on your desk is now missing. What's one helpful and unhelpful thought you could have about this situation? If you had the unhelpful thought that your neighbor took your pencil, what might you do? This is an example of how an unhelpful thought can lead to negative decisions. Now, let's explore how to interrupt the cycle of unhelpful thoughts that lead to negative decisions so we have a better chance at making positive decisions. Take a look at the cycle on the screen. Strong emotions, unhelpful thoughts, negative decision, stronger emotion. Have you ever been caught in this cycle? What are some ways you can interrupt this cycle? Some possible ideas are to calm down, stop and think, and catch the unhelpful thought and change it. We can do two key things to interrupt our cycles. We can use an emotion management strategy, or we can reframe unhelpful thoughts into more helpful thoughts. Let's talk about emotion management strategies. In earlier lessons, we learned that when we manage our strong emotions, our amygdala turns down our feelings alarm, and our cortex has time to catch up and think. What emotion management strategies have we already learned in our second step lessons? Slow breathing, walking away, and counting. Now think about other emotion management strategies that work for you. Now think about other ways to calm down that you already use and that work for you. Let's talk about reframing unhelpful thoughts into helpful thoughts. To reframe means to look at situations or thoughts from a different point of view. A frame is the way we look at something. If we look at something through a negative frame, we're more likely to have unhelpful thoughts. Look at the cloudy, rainy day. When we change the frame to a more positive one, we can transform our unhelpful thoughts into helpful ones. We can choose to look on the bright side of things. Reframing unhelpful thoughts can change how you feel. Reframing helps us make more positive decisions, but we need to calm down our strong emotions first so our cortex can think clearly. Then we can notice and reframe our unhelpful thoughts. To help reframe our thoughts, we can ask ourselves these questions. Am I assuming something bad will happen? Am I assuming the other person was being intentionally mean? What can I learn from the situation? When we're having unhelpful thoughts, we often exaggerate or believe things are worse than they really are. Asking ourselves these questions helps us see that. Now you'll practice reframing unhelpful thoughts into helpful thoughts in this situation. You studied really hard for a science test, but got a much lower grade than you expected. It's important to imagine yourself in this situation and think of any unhelpful thoughts you might typically have after getting a poor grade on a test. If you can't think of any, use the unhelpful thoughts shown on the screen. I'll never be good at science. The test was totally confusing. The teacher was unfair. You're going to now describe the possible emotions you may have, 2 unhelpful thoughts, and you're going to reframe your unhelpful thoughts into helpful thoughts. Remember to use the 3 reframing questions we learned. Am I assuming something bad will happen? Am I assuming the other person was being intentionally mean? And what can I learn from this situation? Okay, let's look at some helpful thoughts that the student came up with. I can get better at science. Maybe I need a different way of studying. The teacher was just trying to see how much we knew. Look at the 3 reframing questions we discussed earlier. Which one do you think you might use the most often and why? What's a question of your own you might ask to help reframe your unhelpful thoughts to helpful thoughts? Here's our reframing questions. When you're having an unhelpful thought, ask yourself, am I assuming something bad will happen? Am I assuming the other person was being intentionally mean? Or what can I learn from this situation? Today we practice reframing unhelpful thoughts by using some reframing questions. This week, try to notice your unhelpful thoughts and reframe them into helpful thoughts. In the next lesson, we'll continue this work by learning how to use positive self-talk as another way to help manage our emotions.